The first time Meredith knocked on his door, she was desperate enough to trust a stranger with her life. Snow fell in thick, silent curtains across the mountain valley, blanketing the world in pristine white. The old log cabin sat nestled against a grove of towering pines, smoke curling lazily from its stone chimney into the grey December sky. Inside, the warmth of the crackling fire cast dancing shadows on weathered wooden walls, creating a sanctuary against the harsh wilderness outside. Garrett Sullivan had built this life deliberately. After 8 years in the army and 2 tours overseas, he had traded the chaos of military life for the solitude of the mountains. Here, among the peaks of northern Montana, he found the peace that had eluded him for so long. His days were filled with simple tasks: chopping wood, tending to his small garden in summer, maintaining the cabin his grandfather had left him. He spoke to no one for weeks at a time, and that suited him just fine. The knock on his door came on a Tuesday evening, sharp and urgent against the wind. Garrett paused, his hand frozen on the poker he was using to tend the fire. In 3 years of living here, no one had ever knocked on his door. The nearest neighbor was 15 miles down the mountain, and the main road was a good 40-minute drive through winding forest paths. He opened the door to find a young woman standing on his porch, her dark hair dusted with snow, her green eyes wide with exhaustion and fear. She wore a thin jacket that offered little protection against the mountain cold, and in her arms she cradled something wrapped in a faded blue blanket. "Please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need help." Garrett's first instinct was to step back, to politely decline whatever trouble she was bringing to his doorstep, but something in her expression stopped him. He had seen that look before, in the faces of refugees they had helped overseas. Desperation wrapped in determined courage. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. The woman stumbled slightly as she entered, and Garrett caught her elbow, steadying her. Up close, he could see that she was younger than he had first thought, maybe 22 or 23. Her cheeks were flushed from cold, and there were dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and worry. "Sit by the fire," he said, guiding her to the worn leather armchair that faced the fireplace. "You're frozen through." As she settled into the chair, the bundle in her arms shifted, and Garrett heard it then, a soft, mewing cry that made his chest tighten. "A baby. When did you last eat?" he asked, already moving toward the kitchen. "Yesterday, I think." Her voice was hoarse, uncertain. Garrett ladled soup from the pot he kept simmering on the wood stove, added thick slices of bread he had baked that morning, and carried the meal to her on a wooden tray. She ate with the focused intensity of someone who had been truly hungry, and he pretended not to notice the tears that slipped down her cheeks as she did. The baby began to fuss, and the woman, she still hadn't told him her name, shifted the blanket back to reveal a tiny face, red and scrunched with displeasure. Garrett asked. 6 weeks. She touched the baby's cheek with infinite gentleness. "His name is Lucas. And yours?" "Meredith." She hesitated, then added, "Meredith Chen." Garrett nodded, settling into the chair across from her. The fire popped and hissed between them, filling the silence. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows and reminding them both how isolated they were. "What kind of help do you need?" "Meredith." She looked down at the baby, her jaw tightening. "I need somewhere safe to stay, just for a little while, until I can figure things out." She raised her eyes to meet his. "I can pay you. I have some money saved. I don't need your money." Garrett leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "But I need to know what I'm getting myself into." "Are you running from someone?" The question hung in the air for a long moment. Meredith's arms tightened around Lucas, and Garrett saw her internal struggle play out across her features. "His father," she said finally. "Derek, he's not a good man. When I found out I was pregnant, he wanted me to... She stopped, shaking her head. "I couldn't. But after Lucas was born, Derek changed his mind. He wants to be involved now, but only on his terms. He wants to control everything, where I live, who I see, how I raise Lucas. So you left." I tried to make it work. I really did. But last week, he showed up at my apartment drunk and angry because I wouldn't move in with him. He grabbed Lucas from me, said he was going to take him whether I liked it or not. Her voice broke slightly. "I got Lucas back, but Derek said he'd be getting a lawyer, that he'd make sure I never saw my son again if I didn't do exactly what he wanted." Garrett felt a familiar anger building in his chest, the same protective fury that had served him well as a soldier. He had seen too many situations like this, too many people trapped by those who should have protected them. "So you came here," he said. "My car broke, down about 5 miles down the mountain. I've been walking since morning." Meredith shifted Lucas to her shoulder, patting his back gently. I saw your smoke from the road. You're the first person I've encountered in hours. You walked 5 miles in the snow with a baby. I didn't have a choice. The simple statement hit Garrett harder than it should have. He understood about not having choices, about doing whatever it took to survive. He also understood about the weight of responsibility, the way it could both crush you and give you the strength to keep moving. You can stay, he said. Meredith's eyes widened. Just like that, just like that. Garrett stood, moving to add another log to the fire. The couch folds out into a bed. It's not much, but it's warm and dry. I don't understand. You don't even know me. Garrett turned back to her, and for a moment the carefully constructed walls he had built around his heart seemed to thin. I know enough. You're a mother protecting her child. That's all I need to know. Over the following days, an unexpected routine developed. Meredith proved to be quiet and unobtrusive, helping with cooking and cleaning without being asked. She was clearly educated. He caught glimpses of her reading thick novels from his bookshelf in the evenings, but she never complained about the rustic conditions or the isolation. Lucas, meanwhile, seemed to thrive in the mountain air. The baby's cries became less frequent, his sleep more peaceful. Garrett found himself drawn to the child in ways that surprised him. He had never considered himself particularly good with babies, but something about Lucas's trusting gaze and tiny grasping fingers touched something deep inside him. You're a natural, Meredith said one evening, watching as Garrett carefully fed Lucas a bottle while she prepared dinner. I doubt that, Garrett replied, but there was warmth in his voice that hadn't been there when she first arrived. My dad was never comfortable around babies, Meredith continued, stirring the pot of stew. Even his own. He always acted like we might break if he held us too long. What about now? Your family? Meredith's stirring slowed. They disowned me when I wouldn't marry Derek. He's from their social circle, wealthy, connected. They thought I was throwing away my future by not staying with him. Even after I told them what he was really like, Garrett felt that protective anger rise again. Their loss. She smiled at that, the first genuine smile he had seen from her. You say that like you mean it. I do. 2 weeks into her stay, Meredith's past caught up with them. Garrett was outside splitting wood when he heard the sound of an engine echoing through the valley. He set down his axe and watched as a black SUV wound its way up the narrow mountain road toward his cabin. His military training kicked in immediately. He assessed the terrain, calculated distances, noted potential cover. Then he thought of Meredith and Lucas inside the cabin, and his jaw tightened. The SUV stopped in front of the cabin, and a man stepped out. He was tall and well-dressed, with a kind of confident posture that came from never being told no. Even before he spoke, Garrett knew this was Derek. Afternoon, Derek called out, his voice carrying that particular brand of false friendliness that barely concealed threat. I'm looking for Meredith Chen. I have reason to believe she's here. Garrett didn't move from where he stood beside the woodpile, his hand resting casually on the axe handle. Private property. Derek's smile faltered slightly. Look, I'm not looking for trouble. Meredith is the mother of my child, and she's not thinking clearly. I just want to talk to her. She's not here. My GPS tracker says otherwise. Derek held up his phone, showing a blinking red dot. Smart of her to keep her phone, but not very clever if she was trying to hide. Garrett's blood ran cold. A tracking app? Of course. Like I said, Garrett repeated, his voice deadly calm. She's not here. Derek's facade of politeness finally cracked. Listen, mountain man. I don't know what sob story she told you, but Meredith is unstable. She stole my son and ran off into the wilderness like some kind of crazy person. I'm trying to be reasonable here, but if I have to call the police, call them. The simple response seemed to catch Derek off guard. What? Call the police? Let's see what they think about a man who tracks a woman without her consent and follows her to a remote location to intimidate her. Derek's face darkened. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Actually, Garrett said, stepping forward. I do. I've dealt with bullies before. They're all the same, all bluster until someone stands up to them. For a moment, the two men faced each other in the snowy clearing, the tension thick between them. Derek was clearly weighing his options, probably calculating whether this mountain stranger was worth the risk. The cabin door opened behind Garrett, and Meredith stepped onto the porch. She carried Lucas in her arms, but her spine was straight, her chin raised defiantly. Hello, Derek, Mary. Derek's voice softened, became almost pleading. Baby, I've been so worried. This isn't like you, running off like this. Come home, and we can work everything out. I am home, Meredith said quietly. The words hit all three adults with equal force, but for different reasons. Derek's face contorted with rage, while Garrett felt something shift deep in his chest. This isn't your home, Derek snarled. This is some backwoods shack in the middle of nowhere. What about Lucas? What kind of life is this for him? A safe one, Meredith replied. Safe. Derek laughed harshly. With him, he gestured at Garrett dismissively. You don't know anything about this guy. He could be a serial killer for all you know. He's a better man than you'll ever be, Meredith said, and the quiet conviction in her voice made Garrett's throat tighten. Derek's control finally snapped completely. He lunged toward the porch, but Garrett moved faster, intercepting him and grabbing his arm. Time to leave, Garrett said, his voice low and dangerous. Derek tried to pull away, but Garrett's grip was iron. You can't keep her here against her will. I'm not keeping her anywhere. She's choosing to stay. This isn't over, Derek hissed as Garrett escorted him back to his SUV. I have rights. I have lawyers. Good luck with that, Garrett said, releasing Derek's arm. But if you come back here uninvited, you'll be trespassing. And in Montana, we take that seriously. Derek climbed into his SUV, his face twisted with fury and humiliation. He slammed the door and peeled out, sending up sprays of snow and gravel as he disappeared down the mountain road. Garrett stood watching until the sound of the engine faded completely, then turned back to the cabin. Meredith was still standing on the porch, Lucas crying softly in her arms. He tracked my phone, she said, her voice shaky now that the adrenaline was wearing off. We'll take care of that, Garrett said, climbing the porch steps. Are you okay? She nodded, then shook her head, then started to cry. Garrett hesitated for only a moment before pulling both her and Lucas into his arms, holding them as she sobbed against his chest. I'm sorry, she whispered. I brought this to your door. I should go. You're not going anywhere, Garrett said firmly. This is your home now, remember. She pulled back to look at him, her eyes searching his face. Did you mean that, when you said Derek was wrong about not knowing anything about you? Garrett considered the question seriously. What did she know about him, really? That he was a veteran who valued solitude, that he could split wood and bake bread and hold a baby with surprising gentleness, that he was willing to stand between her and danger without hesitation. Maybe that was enough. What do you want to know? He asked. Everything, she said simply. So he told her, about his childhood in foster care, about joining the army to find purpose and belonging, about the missions overseas, the friends he had lost, the guilt that had driven him to seek solitude in these mountains, about the nightmares that had finally started to fade since she and Lucas had arrived. She listened without judgment, asking gentle questions, sharing pieces of her own story in return. Her childhood with distant, demanding parents, her struggles in college, the pressure to be perfect, her relief at finding herself pregnant, even under difficult circumstances, because it finally gave her something that was truly hers. I never expected to feel at home anywhere, she said as they sat by the fire later that evening. Lucas sleeping peacefully between them, especially not in a place like this. What's wrong with a place like this? Garrett asked, mock-offended. Meredith laughed, and the sound filled the cabin with warmth. Nothing, that's the point. It's perfect. Spring came early that year, bringing with it wildflowers and the sound of snowmelt rushing down from the peaks. Garrett taught Meredith how to tend the garden, how to identify edible plants in the forest, how to read weather patterns in the clouds. She taught him how to change diapers efficiently, how to make Lucas laugh, how to open his heart to love again. Lucas took his first steps on a sunny May morning, tottering between Meredith and Garrett with a wide, gummy grin. They celebrated with a picnic by the stream that ran behind the cabin. And Garrett realized he couldn't remember ever being happier. I have something for you, Meredith said that evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and rose. She handed him a small wrapped package, and inside he found a simple gold band. Meredith, he started, but she pressed a finger to his lips. I know we haven't talked about the future much, she said. I know this all started because I needed help and you were kind enough to give it. But somewhere along the way, this stopped being about survival and started being about something else entirely. Garrett took her hand, marveling at how perfectly it fit in his. What are you saying? I'm saying, I love you, Garrett Sullivan. I love the way you hum while you cook, and the way you read to Lucas even though he's too young to understand. I love how gentle you are, and how fierce you can be when protecting the people you care about. I'm saying I want to build a life here with you, if you'll have us. Garrett looked at this woman who had stumbled into his carefully ordered world and turned everything upside down in the best possible way. Lucas babbled happily from his spot on a blanket nearby, reaching for fireflies that danced just out of his grasp. The question isn't whether I'll have you, Garrett said, slipping the ring onto his finger. The question is whether you can handle a lifetime of mountain winters and terrible cell phone reception. "I think I can manage," Meredith said, and then she was in his arms, and he was kissing her as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. They were married by a justice of the peace in the small town at the base of the mountain, with Lucas serving as their only witness. Derek had made good on his threats, hiring lawyers and filing custody petitions, but they had disappeared as suddenly as they had appeared. Garrett suspected that Derek's family money couldn't buy him sympathy from mountain judges who valued character over connections. Years later, as Garrett watched Lucas chase his younger sister through the wildflower meadow behind their expanded cabin, he would think about the night Meredith had first knocked on his door, how close he had come to turning her away, to letting fear and solitude win over hope and love. She had given him her trust when she had every reason to be afraid. He had given her and Lucas a home when they had nowhere else to go. But the truth was, they had saved each other. She had taught him that isolation wasn't the same as peace, and that the strongest walls were the ones built from love rather than fear. The mountain man's promise had been simple: to protect them, to provide for them, to love them with everything he had. It was a promise he kept every day, in the meals he cooked and the fires he built, in the bedtime stories he told and the hands he held during thunderstorms. And every evening, as the sun set behind the peaks and painted their world in gold, Garrett gave thanks for the desperate knock on his door that had brought him everything he never knew he was looking for.